Hey guys, Red Zone Guy here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Los Angeles Rams and why I do foresee them being a Super Bowl contending team in this 25-26 season. And there were a lot of question marks kind of going into this year and kind of how this team was going to look like as far as the roster goes. So starting off with Cooper Kupp, I mean, he's the obvious choice, right? I mean, he's been an integral part of this offense since he got drafted by the organization. And we have seen some incredible things from Cooper Kupp on that Rams team. You know, he did have his Triple Crown Super Bowl MVP season in 2021. He ended that year with 1,947 yards on 145 catches, averaging about 13.4 yards per reception, and he did end with about 16 touchdowns that year. But we have seen Cooper Kupp kind of struggle with injuries over the years. You know, he's kind of on and off the field at times, and his production has slightly decreased over the years as, you know, Puka Nacua has been more integral in the offense, and he's really become the Rams' #1 target. And I think one of the biggest expediting factors for the Rams is just the fact that both Puka and Cooper Kupp are most efficient in that slot position, and they really only had space for one, right? And obviously Puka being a lot younger, I think they're going to prioritize him. And Sean McVay, he did attempt to put Cooper Kupp in that outside X position, but like we saw, it really just didn't work. You know, and in all honesty, he got basically completely phased out of the offense about halfway through the season. He ended it with 710 receiving yards. He averaged about 10.6 yards per reception, and he only ended it with 6 touchdowns last year. I mean, I vividly remember his goose egg in fantasy last year. I think it was week 15 against the Niners. He had 3 targets, and he wasn't able to come down with any of them. So the Rams end up releasing Cooper Kupp right after the season, right? He ends up going to the Seattle Seahawks with Sammy Darnold. And I do have a completely separate video on the Seattle Seahawks and kind of what they're doing. So if you want to check that out, you can watch that after this video. I'll link it in the description, or I'll put a little banner up here at the top right. And then you have the whole Matthew Stafford situation. So his contract is up and he's looking for a big payday, right? And the Rams told him to go test some of the free agent markets to see what some of the other teams are looking to give him. So this is just a big game of chicken between Matthew Stafford and the Rams, right? I mean, he's looking for a contract somewhere in the $40 to $45 million per year. So we did see the Raiders showing some interest in Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, the reports are obviously it's all BS. You know, they're saying that Tom Brady accidentally, you know, quote unquote, accidentally bumped into Matthew Stafford at a ski resort in Montana, which is down the street from Tom Brady's, you know, vacation house. So all of that drama, and honestly, Matthew Stafford just decides to come back to the Rams. They do agree to figure out the contract details kind of after the offseason. So Matthew Stafford is a very good quarterback. I mean, in 2024, he threw for 3,762 yards. He had 20 touchdowns and only had 8 interceptions. He had a completion percentage of 65.8%. So moving back into the receiving room, obviously for the Los Angeles Rams, they did replace Cooper Kupp with Davante Adams from the Jets. All right, like this video if you guys are excited about Davante Adams coming over to the Los Angeles Rams. And let me know in the comments how you feel about it. I mean, do you think that Davante Adams is going to like interfere or, you know, take away from some of Puka Nacua's production next year? And I do think this was an A+ pickup for the Rams. I mean, Davante Adams is an elite veteran receiver. Yes, he's a little bit older, but like we saw last year, I mean, he can get open. He has no problem getting open, and he was Rodgers' #1 target even with Garrett Wilson on that team. And Davante Adams actually played between both the Jets and the Raiders last year. He still put up an extremely productive season, looking at about 1,063 yards on 85 receptions. He averaged 12.2 yards per reception and ended the year with 8 touchdowns between both those teams. I mean, I remember last year, Davante Adams put up a 42.8 points in fantasy one week. I believe it was week 15 against the Jaguars. Now, I do think there might be a slight regression for Davante Adams this year, as Sean McVay does love to run the football with Kyren Williams, and obviously Puka Nacua is still going to be their clear #1 target, and they really love to kind of feed him those wide receiver screens, so I think he's going to be a PPR machine this year in fantasy. And the Rams also actually lose Demarcus Robinson as well, and he did have some really bright moments with the Rams this year, but I don't think it'll be a huge issue, or, you know, I don't think it's going to be detrimental to the offense. You know, they do still have Tutu Atwell as kind of like a #3 deep speedy option. I do expect them to take a wide receiver in this year's draft, maybe like the 3rd or 4th round in all honesty. As far as a wide receiver out of the draft that I think would be a good fit, you know, I could see them maybe taking like Matthew Golden. You know, he's very quick, and, you know, Puka and Davante Adams aren't necessarily the fastest in the world. They do have Adams on a 2-year deal, so obviously he's not like a long-term solution for them. So I'd like to transition to the run game here. You know, Sean McVay, he really loves to run the ball with Kyren Williams. He is a bell cow running back, so he's great in the passing game, and he's a huge red zone threat for this team. So in 2024, Kyren Williams posted 316 rushing attempts for 1,299 yards, so that's averaging about 4.1 yards per carry. He did finish with a career high 14 touchdowns this year. And they did draft Blake Corum in the 2024 draft in the third round, so he's a great option to have in case Kyren Williams goes down or in case they want to do more of a split backfield. And this is actually the last year of Kyren Williams' rookie deal, so with that being said, I do think they're going to target a running back in this year's draft, especially considering it's so deep, right? They could really get a good running back in one of those later rounds. If you ask me, I think that they would target someone like Caleb Johnson in one of the earlier rounds, or if they're looking to kind of wait to maybe some of the later rounds, I could see Jaden Blue. He's really quick and he is a bigger running back as well. But let me know in the comments if you think there's maybe a different rookie running back that they should target, if there's maybe a better fit for the Rams. And the Rams offensive line was pretty solid. I mean, they did struggle with some injuries earlier in the season, but they were trending upwards as they were getting healthy, and they actually ranked 7th in the NFL over the last 4 weeks of the regular season. So the Rams actually brought in Coleman Shelton as some extra depth for that center position behind Limmer. And I've actually seen some mock drafts as well that are showing them taking Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. He played both tackle and guard, but he did largely play guard last year, so I think he'll be a great option to add as more depth on the offensive line. So reviewing kind of the offense before we delve into the defense, right, I do think it's going to be a more effective pass game this year with both these receivers. So this is a side note, but I do think it's interesting, right? Puka Nacua actually gave up his number 17 number. He gave it to Devontae Adams and switched back to his college number, which is number 12. And as far as the run game goes, I would foresee a similar output to last year. Sean McVay, he loves to run the ball with Kyren Williams, so I don't foresee any massive changes there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a slight regression as far as the touchdowns go for Kyren Williams. With Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, you could see some of those touchdowns being taken by them in that strong receiving core. So looking at the Rams defense, right, they have some very talented young players on this team, and Jared Verse is probably the most exciting defensive player on this team since Aaron Donald. And him and Byron Young will be a great pass rushing duo again this year. Last year they actually combined for a total of 12 sacks. Other than that, they didn't really lose any big defensive pieces. If they could draft some talent for their secondary, I think that would be huge for them, because like we saw last year, the Rams passing defense, it needs some work. They ranked 20th in the NFL, actually giving up 223 yards per game. And now where the Rams shined last year on defense was really in their blitzing, right? They were very efficient in their blitzing last year. They ranked first in the NFL in their pressure rate. And the Rams actually picked up Poona Ford, a defensive tackle for the Chargers last year. He had 3 sacks with them, and he actually played every single game of the regular season, which is crazy impressive for a defensive tackle. I think he'll be a great option for them, and I think he should help that pass rush as well. I do think this defense is pretty dialed in. I think the only thing that they're really missing is kind of an all-star cornerback, so I think if they could target like Will Johnson in this year's draft, that'd be huge for them. And this is the best roster this team's had in the past few seasons, so I'm very confident that this team is going to win the division this season. Las Vegas actually has San Francisco as the favorites for winning the division, which normally I would agree with. San Francisco has a very good team, a very good infrastructure. Kyle Shanahan is a great coach, but in all honesty, they just lost an absolute haul. Half their defense is gone, so I'm not really with that. You have the Christian McCaffrey question mark. So my projections as far as the rankings go would be number 1 for Los Angeles, right? They're going to win. San Francisco would be 2nd, and then we got Seattle at 3rd, and then Arizona at 4th. I not only see them winning the division, but I also see them making a deeper playoff push this year. And last year, the Rams were the only team that were competitive with the Eagles, right? They kept it close. Only losing 28-22 in the NFC title game, and that game was in the snow, which is quite impressive, being that they're based in LA and they play in the SoFi Dome, so they don't really deal with weather at all. And this is a bold prediction, but honestly, I would say it's the Commanders versus the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and I think the Commanders will pull out by maybe like a touchdown or a field goal. But anyways, I think that wraps up this video, so thank you guys for watching. Like if you made it to the end, and subscribe for more football content just like this. But either way, the Red Zone guy is signing out. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and see you in the next video.